Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and we're going to jump right into this update sneak peek that Raid has let out. Given I'm not a content creator, I haven't had a chance to preview a lot of the stuff that's coming out, so I'm going to be reacting to this as well as I can. I have actually seen the video before, so these are not going to be my first reactions, but I want to give you some of my thoughts on the patches, at least what they're talking about here, what's coming out.
Hey everyone, update 8.60 is almost here, so it's time for our regular sneak peek at what we've been working on. Let's dive in. First up, we're introducing a fifth divinity, Harmony. Like the
So, new Divinity, definitely cool. They talk about a couple of these, they don't talk about all of them. What I've seen from other content creators in the preview, I like the rares. I do not like the epics and the legendaries, and I'll cover the ones that they actually talk about here.
other divinities, there'll be 6 new blessings, focused on healing and strengthening your team using the power of nature. Far out, man. One of the new rare blessings is called Nourish, and it'll improve the strength of continuous heal buffs placed by the wearer. And
Continuous heal buffing seems pretty decent, given that's not covered by other healing. They also are about to mention that that does help with restored max HP as well, so it is definitely good to see that continuous heals will have a place in the game for champions. I can see that being used on several champions. I think it's pretty good.
restore any destroyed max HP for good measure. Pretty sweet, right? Well, Harmony isn't all about peace and love. One of the epic blessings, called Neutralize, will grant a chance to land debuffs through poison cloud buffs.
Yeah, I don't see this one being particularly good. The percentage chance is pretty low. Even at 6-star, it's not a 100% chance, and it's very, very situational, and there's so many better ways to approach the poison cloud than simply trying to ignore the poison cloud. Now, if you can't, and you're struggling with teams that are having trouble getting through it, especially if you're building mostly epics, maybe there's a place for it, but overall, it just strikes me as not particularly exciting. The big place I can see it being used is if you have burn champions, because if you can place a burn through a poison cloud, then you can hit through the poison cloud afterwards. But I don't see that being a particularly big use case given how low a percentage chance it is at the moment.
And the legendary blessing, Cracking Roots, will increase a champion's damage against targets with stone skin.
So 100% damage increased to somebody with stone skin is still reduced by 85%. So you're now doing 30% instead of 15% damage. It's not going to help in a lot of cases for champions that are not breaking through stone skin already in the first place. I don't see this being powerful enough. That said, if the damage is, well, I don't know how they would have to do that. The damage, I could see this would have been better if they instead reduced how effective stone skin was against that champion. So maybe the damage reduction was reduced by 20%, 60%, 100%. That means that 6-star cracking stone skin means you pretty much ignore stone skins 100% of the time. I think that would be great. I don't think that would be imbalanced at all. It would make it a very, very desirable, and it would bring nuking back to the game in many ways. But we'll see. We'll see how this works and see if this actually finds a use. I am not an arena guru necessarily, so maybe the folks in Arena will actually find this to be particularly important on nukers. We'll see.
Don't assume that with a name like Harmony, these new blessings are just for support champions. Some will have your attackers hitting harder too. Harmonious boons for everyone. Keep your eyes peeled for more details. We'll be posting a full infographic with all 6 blessings in our update highlights on our official forum and social media. Update 8.60 also answers a long-standing community request, the ability to make gear presets.
Gear presets is going to be somewhat game-changing because it's going to allow you to build presets for champions and then shuffle your gear around quite a bit. And they actually even address how costly it is to shuffle around gear. Now, I don't think it's going to be easy, and I think this is going to be aimed much more at endgame teams than it's going to be aimed at new players. But I think this is a great addition to the game and helps make gear a little more manageable.
When you use the fitting room, you'll now be able to save your favorite combinations of artifacts and accessories for quick and easy use. Just fill out the slots with the artifacts or accessories you're trying on, and tap the save button. But there's more to it than that. You'll be able to choose whether you want to save your choice as a champion preset or a global preset. As you might have guessed, champion presets are locked to specific champions, while global presets can be equipped by any champion in your collection.
Now, the champion presets, I'm curious if it's set to a very specific champion or if I have multiple duchesses, for example, if my champion presets are shared among all of my duchesses. That's actually worth asking the devs. I don't think that's a problem either way because I think sometimes it's nice to be able to strip one set off of one champion and put it on another champion because you have mastery differences or blessing differences or because you need to move it around. It also can be useful if you have duplicate champions for Hydra and you want to use the same gear. So overall, I think this is pretty good so far. We'll just see the rest of this.
Artifacts and accessories will have separate presets, and you'll be able to switch between them by tapping on their respective icons. Once you've saved a preset, you can then switch up your champion's gear with a few simple taps. Now, we know that changing gear can leave you short on silver, but we've got a little something to help with that. We're introducing the free gear removal booster, which can be earned from hard difficulty stages in the Cursed City. When activated from your inbox, these boosters will, you guessed it, completely reduce the amount of silver it takes to remove gear.
So these are like the free regear events, except for you're going to be able to pick when you get them. They are not canceling the free regear events. They've been very clear about that. So don't worry, don't panic. We're still going to get the free regear events, especially if you're not getting into the hard Cursed City. But it's a little bit extra, and it's something that helps a lot of people that can get into the hard abilities, and they're the ones more likely to actually be using this preset.
Activate a booster and use the limited time window to swap out as much gear as possible and conquer new stages. Oh, and one more thing. We're also adding the Hide Set Filters button to the accessories menu, so you can browse and equip to your heart's content. The next major part of this update will bring something we've been promising for a while. It's time for balance changes to Raid's toughest dungeons, the Iron Twins Fortress, the Sand Devil's Necropolis, and the Phantom Shogun's Grove.
Now, just a bit of a hot take on this. I don't think Iron Twins is particularly hard, but I know that some of the stat requirements at the top are problematic, which, we'll see what they address.
We've turned down the dials on the Iron Twins, nerfing this killing machine's total HP, defense, resistance, and most importantly, accuracy.
That'll help quite a bit.
It's easier to resist those nasty Iron Brand debuffs and land your own.
That's actually a big deal because resistance teams were one of the ways they sold for actually getting through this boss, and the resistances that you needed were so ridiculous that you could not build a full team with it that did anything other than resist and maybe land a few debuffs, and it just wasn't worth it. And the accuracies are huge too. We're talking 550 accuracy required at level 15, so reducing these, very, very good. I think that's going to help a lot of people who have been struggling to get higher up, But I suspect there's a little more to it as well.
Speaking of Iron Brand, we're reducing the amount of stacks applied by the Fires of Insanity and Ruinous Swath skills. We're also reducing how often the Iron Twins activate the Retaliatory Launch skill. Instead of 4 times, it'll only happen when the Iron Twins' HP drops below 80%, 60%, and 40% of their max HP.
So the Iron Brand means he'll have less attack up as he hits you, so you'll take a little less damage, and that'll scale a little less often. He'll do less of the cleanse and retaliation, which will make the boss quicker. He's going to take more damage from regular hits because of the stat decrease. Overall, this is making the dungeon much more accessible without changing the core mechanics, and I think this is actually a great move by Raid to deal with this.
Offensive capabilities reduced. Time for Anime to face the Nerf bat. Get it? Bat? Anyway, he's also getting a significant decrease to all of his stats except attack and speed.
Same thing with Iron Twins. He was certainly a bit worse because of everything else he brings as well, so decreasing all this stuff will make him an easier boss and a little more accessible. You still need to deal with the speed. You're still going to need to deal with the nuke that he's going to possibly nuke and kill your team, so you're going to have to deal with the revive on death mechanics of some kind or figure out how to sleep him. But overall, you're going to need less stats to put stuff on him. That's good.
And we're increasing his slumber counter as well. Sand Devils still need the beauty sleep. At lower stages, the slumber counter will increase to 16, and at higher stages, it's now 8. So you've got plenty of hits to get your debuffs in. That's not all though. Alname will now only destroy 5% of your champion's max HP instead of 10%. And we're reducing Rest for the Wicked's damage reduction by 15% for each debuff instead of 10%. Essentially, you'll survive longer and hit harder. Win-win.
Yep, that's pretty much it. You'll survive harder, you'll survive harder. You'll survive longer, and you'll live harder. Yeah. You'll survive longer, you'll hit harder, it'll make the boss a lot easier. I think it's, again, a good change.
Then there's Akumori the Phantom Shogun. This poor spectral warlord is getting his stats nerfed the hardest. Ouch. His Purge the Shadow skill has been changed, so now you can remove up to 10 stacks of the Shade counter for every 3 hits, depending on a champion's awakening level. Akumori's Shroud of the Shogun passive is also changing, so it now grants him less Shade stacks for every weak hit champions land on him. To make matters worse for Akumori, the number of Shade stacks that he needs for each immunity or buff has been increased by 10. Exercise your power and send this ghost on to the afterlife.
So the Shade counter is the mechanic that allows him to nuke through things like Unkillable, allows him to ignore max HP hits, burns, poisons, and that sort of stuff. So you can reduce it easier, which suspect means you no longer need blessings. Blessings are just really nice to have as opposed to absolutely need them. And then on top of that, it looks like he doesn't trigger quite as early, which was always problematic because he triggered as low as 20, where he became problematic to deal with. And then on top of that, it looks like he doesn't gain them quite as fast either. So that's all good. That will help with the counter as well. And then obviously all the stat changes. He hit really, really hard when he critically hit because he's able to critically hit. And so nerfing the attack, I think, will help quite a bit as well.
There is one small catch with these rebalances. These new stats will only affect them in their dungeons. The Iron Twins and Alnamea will still be as powerful as they were before when you're facing them in the Cursed City. Well, almost as powerful. The skill changes will apply. Keep an eye out for the full update highlights. We'll feature a detailed infographic on these changes. It'll feature...
Now, that's actually pretty interesting to note as well, but honestly, the complaints about these bosses have not gone through to Cursed City because the Cursed City bosses of them have been fairly balanced for where they are. They're in Soul Cross, which is already fairly rough, and with the limited roster you've had, I've generally not had a problem where they were a stopping point because I couldn't hit the stats I need. They were stopping points because I didn't have the champions to approach them properly to make a team that fit against them properly. And that's fine. That is a much better problem to have in Soul Cross than it is in a regular dungeon that everyone has access to.
Feature all the exact nuts and bolts changes on stats and skills, so you theory crafters can start scheming. That's almost everything, but we've got just enough time to show off some of the gorgeous new champions we've got in the pipeline. There's a terrible and mighty faction unity champion for the Ogren tribes, and a sneaky new mythical champion for the Sylvan Watchers, with a few feathers in his cap. And hey, does that look like the Arbiter? Whew.
Yeah, that may or may not have already been announced as the new fusion. I may have a video on that already out.
That's a hefty update. We hope you're excited about the changes coming in Update 8.60. In the meantime, don't forget to like the video and subscribe.
So there it is, folks. You can find this on the official Raid Shadow Legends video if you want to watch the video directly. Hopefully my commentary on it's been kind of helpful or kind of interesting. I think they've done a decent job of updating the bosses. It looks like there should not be a change in mechanics. So if you have a team that is currently working, it should not change at all, other than it may become easier because of reduced defense and HP to beat the boss than it was prior. So overall, I think it's a win-win for absolutely everybody, but making the game a little more accessible in some of the ways that I think they thought they were doing to make the game harder, I think they made it just a little too hard. So hopefully, we're having some fun, and we'll see how the patch comes down on Thursday. Until then, I'm Bront CatHerder.